Welcome again to Cottage Talk. I'm Russ Goldman. Joining me right now is Tony Gold and Emilio Danello. The Fulham Shadow returns for our post-match show of Fulham's 2-2 draw against Bournemouth. The guys have a lot of views on this match. I have mine as well. And we're going to do this show for the next hour. If you haven't watched it, check out my full-time show, which I did right after the match. This is a few hours later, but it gives us time to really delve into this match, figure out why Fulham come away with a draw instead of a victory. There's a lot for us to get to. I do want to mention, as I mentioned in the full-time show, to please do check out the Cottage Talk Patreon page. I actually just added a very special discount. If you want to check that out, please do check out the Cottage Talk Patreon page. And there is a discount for the first month up there. You'll see it if you go to the Cottage Talk Patreon page. Anyways, enough of that, guys. Let's get to the match. And Mr. Danello, I'll go to you first. Give me your opening thoughts on this match today at Craven Cottage.
Yeah, hi Tony, hi Russ. Look, we've finished the month, a very difficult month, unbeaten. 7 games. We've got, including the Tottenham game, we've been unbeaten. I think we would have all taken that a month ago with a tough run of games that we had. There have been a couple games this month, today in Southampton, where maybe we should have been a little bit more ruthless, more organised, more controlling the game. I think our home form is a little bit erratic this season. I think our home form is actually not where it needs to be. It's not at the top 8 level that we need it to be. If we want to get into Europe, or we have desires to play into Europe, our home form needs to be better. That first and foremost. But overall, I don't think we did enough to win the game today. I thought we scored against a run of play in the first half. I think Bournemouth controlled the first half. We looked shapeless, disorganised. The system, the system was lost on us. The players didn't know, am I playing left back, full back, my midfield? Am I going central defence? It looked a little bit disorganised, but we capitalised on Bournemouth not taking advantage of that. We scored from a set piece, which is unusual for us, and I thought we would push on. In second half, they scored from 2 defensive errors, which is disappointing, but they've also had enough clear-cut chances to maybe taking the lead at 1-1. So overall, look, Bournemouth are a good team. They're a point above us in the table. And there's a reason why they're there. They've beaten Man City, they've beaten Arsenal, thrashed Man United. So it's not a disgrace to draw 2-2 at home to a very organised, very similar looking team like Fulham. So I think it was a good game for the neutral, but I don't know if you agree, Tony, I thought the game was littered with a lot of errors. It was sloppy from both teams. Both teams maybe weren't ruthless in front of goal when they could have been. A lot of balls were given away, poor possession. There's a lot of negatives, but it was an entertaining game. But it wasn't technically the strongest game from a purist perspective. And both teams looked a little bit tired and a bit wasteful when it counts. But overall, 2-2 is not a disgrace against a very organised team. But if you want to push up that table, if you want to get top 8, top 7, our home form needs to improve. And we've lost 4 points in a week against Southampton and Bournemouth. No disrespect to Bournemouth, but you've got to close a game out when you're winning with a minute to go. And that's what's disappointing. We're not going to win much or get the Europe if you're going to concede late goals and keep dropping points like we have done all season so far. But overall, It's a good point against a good team, but it felt like a loss when I left the ground today.
Yep. Okay, very good. Over to you, Tony.
Yeah, look, I think Emilio's covered it really. To be honest with you, he's hit the nail on the head perfectly. Our game management today really carried on from the Chelsea performance. It was bitty. We were giving the ball away far too much at times. Certainly in the first half, the turnover was really poor in my opinion. Certain individuals are not playing to the level that we need them to play at. And look, I think we have to put everything in perspective. And, we can all get carried because we've had such a good run of results in the last 7 games. Obviously, a lot of draws in that, but you've got to think about who we've played. Yeah. And the bottom line is that 4 of the 7 teams are in the top 6. And, we've come away with either a point or a victory. So I think you have to put that in perspective. And if anyone would have said to me at the beginning of the season, at Christmas, after 19 games, that we'd be 8th on 29 points, I would have taken it. Absolutely bitten your hand off, with the fact that we don't have a recognised, prolific goal scorer in the team, that we don't have a really, Emil Smith-Rowe is apparently meant to be that player, but at the moment he's struggling to find his feet. We don't have that driving, attacking midfield player. So all in all, I think that, it's positive. We have to be positive, but I think it's the hope that kills you. I always say this to you, Russell. And the fact of the matter is because we're up there, and it's almost like we're climbing that ladder, and there's always another ring to just get up, and we're just struggling to get there by making things difficult. And I looked at it today, and I don't know if you agree with this, Emilio, but I'm looking at Anderson, right, and I'm thinking to myself, now I know why Palace were happy to let him go. Now I can see it. I can see why, because he's not a £30 million defender. Let's get this straight, right? And in my opinion, he is struggling massively, and he's one of the reasons why we are conceding poor goals at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. No, I totally agree with you. I thought the beginning of the first half dozen games, I thought it was harsh when Diop got dropped to allow Anderson to start. I thought Diop didn't do anything wrong in the first few games. Anderson joined, he found his feet, and he automatically slotted into that central defensive position. But I felt sorry for Diop, who got ousted because he wasn't a big enough defender, so to speak. But you look at his track record since then. He got sent off against Villa. Got an injury against Wolves, but he's been at fault for a few goals. I don't hear enough criticism from fans. Today, I confronted a fan after the game saying, "I've heard you do nothing but lambast Diop for conceding that second goal." I didn't hear any criticism when Anderson was totally ripped apart for their first goal. Anderson was 100% at fault. I don't know if you saw, Tony, he gave away. He had the ball. He was indecisive. Shall I pass it back to Leno or do I?
Oh, that was terrible.
He conceded a throw in. Yep. Moments later, we conceded a goal. That was because of indecisiveness in a position where he could have been more direct, kick it forward or pass it to feet. Do I pass it back to Leno? Indecisive, and then got turned inside out 1-1. So I agree with you. I think he's been underwhelming after the first half dozen games. And like I said, sending off, his fault, got caught out. Wolves, injury, but he didn't look particularly effective up to the point he got injured. Today didn't look fit. He looked slow. He looked sluggish. Against 100%. Chelsea, I thought Diop protected him throughout that game. Diop didn't get enough plaudits but Anderson didn't look the strong central future captain that we all thought he was going to be. So I've been underwhelmed with him since October time, since the Villa game in particular.
Okay, very good, guys. All right, let's move on. Before we go to my section, the good, the bad, and who won the coaching battle, I actually think this is a good time for us to talk about the starting 11 and the shape, the formation. So let's do this twofold. Tony, I'll go to you first. I want to get your thoughts on the starting 11 because I want to get how you feel about the decisions he made on that starting 11, but also once you saw it, you knew that it was going to be three at the back. Did you agree with it? And how do you think it worked in the match? Do you think it was possibly a mistake to play that formation against Bournemouth? I'm curious your thoughts on that, and then I'll go to Amelia.
Look, I think because it apparently worked against Chelsea and we got the result, I don't necessarily think that we've looked particularly comfortable in that formation. The result against Chelsea, as I said to you, flattered to deceive a lot because I don't think we played particularly well, certainly in that first half. Obviously, the euphoria takes over because you've won the game, first win at Stamford Bridge for years and so on. But you saw it today. Again, if you're going to play five at the back, the three centre halves have to have an understanding of what they're doing, where they need to be positionally. And once again today, I felt that the three of them looked all over the place at times defensively. And you look at the first goal, Anderson doesn't know whether to stick or twist, right? The ball comes across. Now, as a defender, first of all, you've got to read the danger. He didn't read the danger. Then he's completely the wrong side of the play. And that's just one example of all afternoon of how that was. Do I agree with it? Look, I don't think Silva really had many options, is the honest truth. I don't think he knows in his mind which one of the three centre halves he needs to drop. That's the problem he's got.
So you think that's what it's about?
100%.
Okay.
100%. It has to be. And then, don't get, look, Pereira at the moment is a square peg in a round hole. It's as simple as that. He is filling a void. And I think that we are playing with 10 men virtually every time he plays in that position. I don't understand I still don't understand what Silva thinks he brings or offers to this group on match days, in match situations, because if you look at him as an individual, other than the corner that he put in for the goal, what else does he bring to the game? Against Chelsea, he was abysmal, absolutely shocking. Everything was half-hearted. Yeah, he didn't put himself on the line, doesn't win tackles. I just don't understand. So, yeah, I mean, I would argue that I would have made the change in that particular position today.
Okay.
But that would probably be it.
Okay. Emilio, your thoughts on the starting 11 when you saw it, and then also your thoughts on the formation and how it played itself out.
I agree. Tony said exactly what I was going to say about you can't change a winning formula. Yeah, we beat Chelsea the other night, and that seemingly worked. That form. I slightly disagree. I thought Chelsea, after the first 20 minutes, I thought Fulham controlled that game. I thought we had a lot of possession. Go to Stamford Bridge and dominate possession against a team who win most games, and their possession rates are usually in the high 50s, early 60s. So to go to Stamford Bridge and boss the game to some extent by having a lot of possession. Maybe we didn't create as many clear-cut chances on Thursday night, but overall, I thought we were full value for that victory. But that used the word euphoria, Tony, and that's true because I think we've got a habit of, can we carry on where we left off, or is that euphoria going to get the better of you? 3 days they would play a good Bournemouth team who play with a higher press than Chelsea do, for example, and we struggle to play against teams like that. And so I thought the system didn't work today. 1 minute Bassey's carrying a ball forward, then I'm seeing Anderson and he's looking left, right. Have I got enough protection? Have I got Bassey here? Have I got Diop there? It's like we didn't quite know where they were playing. I would have preferred to just maybe play the back four. If you don't want to change it or drop a defender, actually put Robinson more into midfield and keep him on the halfway line and play him as your left winger, so to speak, and maybe put Bassey as your left back if you really want to keep your back four. But overall, we looked a little bit disorganised, especially in that first half. Who's playing where? Who's carrying the ball forward? Who's going to pass left? Who's going to pass right? I think there was too much looking over your shoulder. And Bournemouth are a very quick team, and to be honest with you, they were wasteful throughout the game. I think they could have come away with probably 3 points. They'll be disappointed more so than we did. We were disappointed by not closing the game out. They'll be disappointed in not having won the game. So I thought they had better chances than we did overall. But formation-wise, with Andres Pereira. Look, let's get Berger back. I don't know how long Berger's going to be out for. I think we've missed him.
He was very much missed in this match.
I was a critic of his when we signed. I wasn't inspired, but I've seen him get better and better and better. Just keeping the ball moving, doing the simple things, defending. Then you push Pereira in a more advanced role. I think Pereira's out of position, so we're measuring him in a negative way, in the sense that he's playing out of position. This is not his natural role. His role is playing more behind the striker, playing in a more advanced role. That's where we saw the Andres Pereira a couple of seasons ago. Last season was a little bit up and down. This season he's having to do a different job. So we can't just say measure him based on ineffective. Yes, he hasn't been particularly effective. He's not scoring enough goals. His pass rate today was very poor. I've seen the statistics very poor, but he got an assist, fair enough. But other than that, he did very little today. But I don't want to get on his back because there's other players who are higher profile on higher wages and have cost more money, who have been more ineffective. Smith Rowe cost 4 times more expensive. What's he contributed this season? Anderson cost 3 or 4 times more than Pereira. So let's put things into perspective.
Okay.
Measure on your value for money and your return on investment, rather than just purely Andres Pereira or this and Diop that. I just find some certain players get a lot of criticism when they do wrong, but don't get enough credit when they do right.
Okay. We're going to talk about this later when we talk about the second half, Emilio. And you guys have already mentioned the square peg and round hole with Andres Pereira. I think we understand that, and I think you guys both have done a good job of explaining that. You're in a pickle, as I would say here, is that you don't have Berger. If Berger plays, I think it looks extremely different, Emilio. I think you'll agree with me on that. And I know this is hindsight, right? And Kearney played very well. Would you have considered starting Kearney? It wasn't on my radar. I'm curious your thoughts. No,
not for me. Kearney's not a starting player. He started against Southampton last week. I thought he was very slow, sluggish, and didn't add anything. What did he do of note last Sunday against Southampton? Very little. I think he's come off the bench, added more value against Tottenham. Look, again, he came off the bench against Tottenham. Made a difference. Today, I thought you could argue he was man of the match for his cameo appearance in the second half. So
absolutely. That's the reason why I'm bringing it up. I'm
not good enough
playing
to start.
devil's advocate on this.
Not good enough to start. So as much as I love Tom and his contribution of the last 10 years, and I hope we give him a new contract just to add some dressing room experience and captains avoid, like with Tim Ring. We kept him for many seasons because of the role he plays as a captain. But Tom's, if you want to push on, you need to think beyond Tom Kenny.
Oh, I totally agree. I totally agree. I want to get your thoughts on that, Tony. Listen, I know it's hindsight because he played well. The match changed when he came on, but it wasn't really on my radar to thinking maybe we should start Kearney. What were you even thinking about that?
No, I mean, look, the one thing that Tom does give you is he does bring a bit of composure and control in the middle, and that's because of his experience. But I think Emilio's right. I don't think he's got the legs anymore to play a prominent role in there. But if you look at our bench today, Russ, this is the problem we have. Our depth, I don't think, is where it needs to be if you're looking to be that team that pushes on into the top six. And I think this is something that Silva needs to address in January. And it doesn't mean going out and buying willy-nilly and being prevalent with your money. It means going out and bringing in players that are going to strengthen this core group of players and improve what we've already got, or at least match. There's no point bringing in 2 or 3 bodies that are just going to, fix up a few issues here or there. The bottom line is we've got some key players out. Obviously, we've missed Reece Nelson because he brings something different and gives you something different. Yeah. Obviously, Sander Berg has been a big miss for us because I think his partnership with Lukic has started to flourish, and it hasn't really got going at the moment, really. I mean, it started to, and then it broke up again because then, Lukic got suspended and then he got injured. So we've been a little bit unfortunate in those sort of, situations. But in terms of, as I say, and Smith Rowe, I think Emilio, touched on it before, is that he hasn't, it's like we're waiting for this doll to get wound up and let loose. And it just hasn't happened for him yet. No. But I think we need to be patient.
Okay, very good. All right, guys, let's go to my section I call the good, the bad, and who won the coaching battle. Let's start with the good. And Emilio, I'll go to you first. I want to talk about Bernd Leno. I know I mentioned in a negative fashion that having him as your man of the match is not a good sign, but you need that guy that you can count on. You need that goalkeeper. We don't have to really worry about the goalkeeper. To be honest with you, he's had some moments over his time with Fulham, but the majority of it, he's been fantastic. What are your thoughts about him? I'm putting him in the good category, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, going back to my earlier point about return of investment, how much did we pay for him? And for me, he was player of the season 2 years. I voted him player of the season, not Paulinho. I voted him because he played every game. Paulinho got suspended for 12, 13 games a couple seasons ago. So Leno got player of the season 2 years ago. Last year, didn't have his best season. There was moments where I think he could have been a little bit more commanding in his box. But for what we've paid, and last couple of games in particular, he hasn't, again, not had the best of seasons. There's been moments when I think, he could have done a little bit better here and there. But you need a goalkeeper who's commanding, who's trustworthy, who's got a good rapport with his defenders. And, he was man of the match on Thursday against Chelsea, those stunning saves. And you could argue, Bournemouth were a little bit wasteful, but Leno made some crucial saves, especially when it was 1-0 and 1-1, when the game could have turned. Now, I felt that Bournemouth had a second goal in them when it was 1-1. They were just pressing with numbers, with pace, and we were being stretched. And it just one error away from conceding a second goal. So Bernd Leno, it was great, but I'd like to see the outfield players getting more goods. To be honest with you, I'd like to see Pereira's and Smith Rowe's dominating games, controlling it. Traore's faded after a good start to the season. He's not as effective as he was. Jimenez, he's scoring goals, which is great, but is he going to score hat-tricks in games? No, because in his defence, I don't think we're creating enough chances. Our final ball at times is not good enough. Good movement, good passing in the middle of the pitch, but I think where we're lacking, and maybe Tony will agree, is in that final third, that execution, that final ball needs to be a bit better. Sometimes we're a bit hurried, rushing those passes when just a little bit more composure, calmness, intelligence will make a difference. So that's fun. So if we're going to go and get some players, let's get some players who can create that final third ball and make it more effective and create more chances. Because I don't think goalkeepers make enough saves again when we play teams. I don't know if you agree, Tony. We're got possession, good build-up, but how many key saves are goalkeepers making? Leno's making more saves than our opposition keepers, generally speaking.
Okay, good stuff. Over to you, Tony. Thoughts on Bernd Leno, and who else would you put in the good category?
Yeah, just on Emilio's point, I think you're absolutely spot on, and but I think that has a lot to do with the way that Silva sets us up, Emilio. You know, with playing that one lone striker. I've said it a million times. I think Raul and Muniz have the toughest job in this team by a country mile. They're asked to do an exceedingly amount of work off the ball.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when we do get the possession in the final third and we've got Iwobi on the ball and we've got Wilson on the ball, or we've got Pereira on the ball, or Smith, or whoever it is, you know, they've then got to make sure that they're in the box and they've got to be there and be that one player that's going to, you know, create that magical moment. And I just don't think we're set up that way to score the goals. And I tell you the difference between us and Nottingham Forest at the moment. The difference between us is their front four have got goals in them galore. Yeah. Gibbs White, Alanga, Hudson-Odoi, and Chris Wood. And that's the difference at the moment. That they are very much more direct and much more attacking, and that's why they're sitting third and we are sitting eighth at the moment. Is because those players are delivering every single week, and Chris Wood is scoring goals for fun because he's getting the delivery, he's getting the service, and we just don't have that, you know, that Mitrovic, if you like. You know, if Mitro was playing in this team, he'd be scoring goals for fun. I mean, literally for fun. So I think, look, the good for me today, Russ, was not only Leno's performance, but the 2 goals that we scored today were absolutely
very good goals,
outstanding. You know, absolutely. Raul's header for that first goal, honestly, that was world class. World class.
And let's talk about Wilson's too, because we'll talk about that when we break down the match. That was fantastic too.
Yeah.
Okay, very good, guys. All right, let's unfortunately move on to the bad, because when you have good, you have bad. So I'll get us started, and Tony, I'll start with you. Let's actually start, before we talk about Pereira, let's talk about Anderson. And I'm glad that Emilio talked about this, because you do have to look at the price tag. You do have to mention, like you said, Tony, that you have to think, why did Crystal Palace let him go? Well, maybe we're kind of seeing that a little bit. I still think that he's valuable to us, but he is struggling right now. He, to me, stands out in the bad category. Your thoughts?
Against when he's played against Wolves, I thought there was something wrong with him. I didn't think he looked fit. I don't think he looked sharp. There was something not 100%. And since that game, he has not been the player that we signed at the beginning of the season in the first sort of 3 or 4 games that we saw him. I don't think he's fit. I think he's playing through something. He doesn't look comfortable. His defending for the first goal today was horrible. His defending against Chelsea the other night was horrible. Like I said, I think he's a good defender, but he has to be consistent every single week, and he has to be playing at a high level for him. And I think Palace thought, you know what, we've had the best of him. There's just not enough about him that, you know, against really good, strong centre forwards, I think he struggles, and I think we're starting to see that now. And actually, I think Silva needs to do some evaluating on him, and either get him off the pitch, get him fit, get him up to speed again, or make a decision that actually, because look, if we play 5 against Ipswich at the back, there's something seriously wrong. We cannot play 5 at the back against Ipswich. No way.
Totally agree with that.
But he was horrible today. His performance was horrible. And for me, he was really, we can talk about the second goal, and I don't obviously it was a bad pass from Diop, but I don't blame him in entirety, because like Emilio said earlier, we still had 2 phases of play to defend that ball, and we didn't defend it well at all. So for me, Anderson was the bad today. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Emilio?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've said it earlier, you know, that indecisiveness, especially in that second half. Against Chelsea as well, I thought Diop protected him and covered for him at times when Anderson needed to be a little bit more commanding with his defensive headers, rather than heading them straight back to the opposition. His passing today, we haven't. He's come back from an injury after the Wolves game. I don't think he's fully fit. He struggled against Chelsea. He's definitely struggled again today. You know, if we're going to revert back to a back 4 against Ipswich, then he's going to be the one who needs to be compromised. But when you pay that sort of money, everyone expects him to be our future captain, me included. You know, something's not right there. And there was speculation that he wasn't happy at the club. Maybe these rumours are true. I don't know. But all we can think about is, let's get him fully fit. We've got a game against Ipswich next week. They're no mugs. They held us. They're almost, they're only a 1-0 defeat against Arsenal. They beat Tottenham away. So they're no mugs. But if we want to push up that table, we need to be getting 3 points and winning comfortably. We haven't demolished teams this season like last year. Last year, the 2-5-0 wins. Some team is due a bit of a battering. Maybe it is Ipswich next week, but we need to get back to winning ways, getting those 3 points. But Anderson, for me, was the one that stood out today. Okay, the Diop, that poor pass will be criticised and probably by most fans, but that's because it's Diop. If that was Anderson, where was the criticism for Anderson's first goal? I'm not seeing enough criticism then. Like I said earlier, when I confronted this fan about where's the criticism for Anderson's first goal, but all you've done is effing and blinding towards Diop. That's not consistent. If anything, Anderson was 100% at fault for the first. Diop gave away the ball, but we had chances to clear that ball and we didn't. Bournemouth seemed to have that extra man on the left. I don't know if you saw that as well, Tony. Robinson was pushing too much forward, left the gaps on the left. There was always a man forward in that second half in particular. And it was only, I think it was only a matter of time they were going to score a second goal.
Okay. Excellent stuff, guys. And I just want to mention, because our friend Steve Reynolds is going back and forth with another listener, Carl Tanner, very interesting chat going back and forth between them talking about Diop. So I want to just bring that to the table because I find it fascinating what they're going back and forth with. Steve puts Diop in the good category. Carl's a little bit looking at that mistake. So where do you guys put Diop in this match? I'll go to you first, Tony. What are your thoughts? Again, there's a mistake there, but overall, do you put him in the bad category?
No, not at all. I mean, look, every defenders make mistakes, Russ. And look, he's the thing with Diop is that when he's got time to think about things, this is where he tends to be prone to errors. He had too much time to think. He had Castagna right to the right of him. He could have dropped the ball into him, safe side. He's gone for a long clearance, a long ball. He's completely underhit it. It's been cut out, but the ball has still traveled 50 yards, and still can be defended at that point, and we didn't defend it. So although Diop gave it away and it was a poor giveaway, you can't blame him for the goal, because there's still Leno and 3 other players there, or 4 other players from what I remember. I can't quite remember exactly, but we could have dealt with that. And I think we could have defended that situation better. I thought Diop was solid pretty much throughout the game today. I don't think you can start calling for him to be dropped and all this nonsense. He's been excellent over the last. I'm not his biggest fan by any stretch.
I know that.
You know what? You can't criticise the guy. He's come in and he has been solid. As solid as you'd expect any of your centre-halves to be. Unfortunately, defenders make mistakes. And unfortunately, if they make them in those areas, you get punished. And today was one of those situations.
Well, look, Anderson,
your thoughts,
got
Amelia.
sent off against Aston Villa. 3 games later, he's back in the central defence. He was at fault for the Villa. He was caught out against Aston Villa. Straight red card, a deserved red card. But that was, don't worry, Anderson, you're going to be our future captain. Whatever mistakes you do, you're going to get back in the starting 11. Diop, sorry, mate, you've made a mistake. You're going to be dropped. Sorry, I think Diop has been outstanding this month. Yeah. He made one mistake today. He's going to be criticising by all the fans. People watching this show tonight probably saying Diop was rubbish. Don't know what game you're watching. For 89 minutes, he was calm, composed, looked in control. I always kept looking at him. He was always looking over the shoulder, looking around him. Made a few surging runs forward. I think he's even the beginning of the season, like I said earlier, he didn't make any mistakes. Anderson comes in, 30 million. Sorry, Diop, you're on the bench. Anderson's our key defender here. And he's outshining Anderson. But where's the criticism of Anderson? Let's be clear. If you're going to be consistent, fans, criticise and applaud defenders or players like for like. All the criticism Diop, no criticism of Anderson. Anderson had a shocker today and should be dropped against Ipswich.
Okay, strong words. And I actually agree with that, Emilio. And overall, like I said, that's why I found it interesting, this chat going back and forth. I understand both points of view on this because the goal was the equalizer. So I certainly understand the criticism of the past. But if you look at overall, he's still doing a solid job where you have another player, another central defender who is pretty much poor throughout the match. I think that's the big difference that I'm going. I think you guys are looking at it as well. Okay, guys, let's now go to the coaching battle. This one's interesting because I say this, and I did a a show that's on the Cottage Talk Patreon page, 3 Keys to Victory. My number one key to victory, Tony, was win the coaching battle. That was my number one. So here's my question. Did Marco win the coaching battle, or did Areola win the coaching battle? I'll go to you first.
From an attacking perspective, Bournemouth won the coaching battle. In my opinion, they dominated in attacking areas, in all aspects of the game: corners, shots on goal, possession, movement. They dominated in those areas. I'd love to know what Marco Silva's plan was today. What he actually instructed the players to do in terms of possession of the ball, especially in the first half. I mean, he must be standing there with his assistant tearing his hair out at times, because the amount of times we turned the ball over, literally just aimless passing when there was a better option just 5 yards. And these are professional players getting paid fortunes, and they can't even pass the ball. And that for me is a bigger worry, because with the games that we've got coming up, Emilio's right. Ipswich will not be a walkover by any stretch of the imagination, because they fight until literally the final, whistle. They will be in our faces. They will be working hard. And what they are is they're very, very workmanlike, and they will not stop chasing. Delap, how he likes to play off the shoulder. It could be a real nightmare scenario, that game for us. And we need to sort out how we look after the ball. And I'll go back to the game management. At times, our game management is underwhelming, and it needs to improve. It needs to improve, especially in sort of the just outside our 18-yard box to the halfway line, which is where we seem to be very guilty of turning that ball over far too often.
Okay. Over to you, Emilio. You mentioned this earlier, the decision to change the midfield too late. So I want to get your thoughts on the coaching battle. Where do you lie on this?
Yeah, I think for me, I think it's a bigger picture here. Today was symptomatic of what we've seen all season. Why have we dropped 21 points from winning positions? Is it one game? Is it 2 games? Is it 8, 9, 10 games? Against Arsenal's bigger teams, Liverpool, the fact that you drop points from a leader, that's understandable. But there'll be games that I keep going back to West Ham, Everton. Now we're talking about Southampton. We should have won last week, but even though we don't think we deserve to win that game. And similarly today, these are games that we need to be winning. Nottingham Forest are winning these games and picking up 3 points week in, week out. We're struggling, only getting draws here and there. And for me, the issue here is why we dropped 21. It is 21 points from winning positions. We're top of the league in the Premier League for dropping points from that position. So for me, I saw 5-10 minutes earlier, Iwobi and Lukic completely leggy. And you can ask Joe. I was sitting next to Joe next to me. I said, look, we need to make a change. Those guys, Lukic can barely stay on his feet. Iwobi has run his socks off. They need to come off. Game manage, close the game out, keep ball, keep possession, do the simple thing, do what the Italians always do, keep it simple, don't complicate things. But is that a player's issue, or is that the way Marco Silva sets his teams up and doesn't instruct how to close a game out? It's easier for Marco Silva to keep saying we should have closed the game out, we should have won that game.
Right.
But we've dropped 21 points. Is that entirely on the players that they've dropped 21 points in those positions? Or is there a bigger picture that we need to be considering here? So I'm trying to think objectively here. I think we didn't make those tactical changes in midfield early enough, like around the 80th minute. We left it too late. Bournemouth equalised. Sorry, Marco Silva. I think you could have responded a bit quicker there. It was obvious from where I was watching, those players could barely stand on their feet. And we had low possession rate in the last 10. I'd like to see what the stats were from the 80th to the 90th minute on possession. We probably only had about 30%, giving the ball away too cheaply. And, you don't want to give your opposition an advantage by giving the ball away cheaply and giving them possession, because you're just putting yourself straight away on the back foot. So overall, he did a great job by putting Tom Kearney in. He saw the problems with Andres Pereira. Kearney changed the game in our favour when he came on, doing the simple things well, driving forward, simple passing, but keeping possession. That's the key thing. To win football matches, you have to have possession, play the game out. But why are we losing so many points from a winning position? That's the issue. And I think you can't blame the defenders for that or the team. I think Marco Silva's got a lot to explain there, rather than coming on record and saying we should have won. But you haven't won those games that you should have won, Marco Silva. Cuenca against Everton away, Why the hell are you putting a player who hasn't had 1 minute of Premier League football to his name? You put him against the roughest team in the division, and what do Everton do after 95 minutes? They equalise. Again, there are moments when substitutions have been positive, but Marco Silva is not God either. I've said this before.
Yeah,
he's great. He's the best manager we've had forever, you could argue, but he needs to find a way to stop dropping points and closing those games out, winning 1-0 and winning ugly 1-0, winning ugly 2-1. We're not doing enough of that at the moment.
No, Amelia, listen, I agree with you because we're going to talk about two situations as we break down the game. The 2 goals from Bournemouth. You're talking how many goals have Fulham given up between the 45th minute and the 60 to 65th minute? It's staggering. There are too many goals. And then at the end of matches, the same thing. So is that has to do with coaching? Possibly. So I want to talk a little bit about that when we get to breaking down both halves. And we're going to do that next. Coming up next, the guys are going to break down both halves and we'll end with man of the match. If you're watching live, please feel free to share. Who was your man of the match? Okay, guys, for the second half of the show, we're going to break it down. We'll break down the game. So let's just talk about the first half to get us going, guys. And Tony, I'll go to you first. I think where I want to start talking about this first half is that I thought Fulham started okay. It was almost like a feel-out game in the very beginning between both teams trying to figure out how everything was going to play out. But quickly during that half, I started to notice a trend, and it was Bournemouth controlling the play. What did you witness at the ground that you thought, we might be in trouble here? Because they were controlling the play for a good part of that first half.
But that was mainly down to us, Russ, giving the ball away.
Okay.
You know, if we hadn't given the ball away as much as we did, Bournemouth wouldn't have had so much possession in front of us. The problem was, as I said, we just and actually Emilio's made a very good point about winning ugly. When was the last time you can remember Fulham winning ugly, where they've had to dig in, defend in the trenches, not give anything away? I haven't seen a performance like that since I can't remember, is the honest truth. And he's absolutely right. You know, to push on, sometimes you've got to win ugly. Sometimes you've got to do the horrible part of the game. And at the moment, I don't think we've got enough players in this squad that can do that. That's the reality. And as I said, when Silva's looking at his bench and he's looking to make, you know, changes or to change it, I think he's very limited in what he can do and the players that he can, you know, bring on and he feels that he trusts and can be effective. But in terms of the first half, look, David Brooks had an effort, you know, just over the bar. That on a different day, that could have been anything. Then, you know, again, Anderson caught in no man's land and Semenyo went through. Leno, you know, stood big and made a good save. So at that point, it could be fair to say that Fulham could have been 2-0 down before we'd even had any, you know, joy. Yeah. Then we get the corner. We've spoken about the goal. Great header, great finish.
We'll talk about that next.
Yep. Yeah, because he's, you know, he deserves it with the amount of effort and work ethic that he puts in. And then we talk about the challenge on Robinson.
We're going to talk about that.
So that was a big talking point. But
trust me, we're getting there because I have some thoughts on that, and you guys were there, so I definitely want to get your thoughts.
So I think it was a positive that we've gone in 1-0 up at half time in a game that really, you know, it could have been very different.
Okay. Over to you, Emilio. I want to get your thoughts on the goal from Raul, but before I want to go to Tony's point. Basically pointing the finger at Fulham's players for their wasteful passing, setting up Bournemouth to control the play. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you feel like there's a bit of a hangover from the game against Chelsea. And we've got a habit of doing this, right? It's like, how do we push on? Look, I'm comparing to Nottingham Forest because 6 weeks ago, we were above Nottingham Forest in the table. They've now, won 5 in a row?
It's crazy.
You know, it's crazy, right? And and to add to Tony's earlier point, they've got goal scorers, but they're also keeping clean sheets. We're not doing that. We may pick up goals, but we're also conceding them at the back. And so defensively, we're not where we need to be. But our passing rates in the first half was abysmal. You know, Pereira will get a lot of criticism, clearly, because he's the sort of player you look up to make things happen. But I feel a little bit sorry for him, right? I think does he really want to be at the club or not? I'm still uncertain. To be honest, I still think there's a role for him at this club. But playing him is natural position. Marco Silva, whether you're forced to play him in a more defensive role, and that doesn't suit his style of football, and that's why we're not getting the best of Andreas Pereira this season. I think that's part of the reason. But overall, it's all you can hear in the back of our minds: and Pereira this, Pereira this, Pereira that. But Iwobi was wasteful at times in the first half. So was Robinson. Anderson. But those players are afforded criticism by the fans because they're their favourites. When a fan doesn't like you, or you've got a majority of fans who are against a certain player, it just takes one error or one ill-judged pass or missed pass. All you hear is effing and blinding. So again, it's all about bias. I like to be very neutral and grounded and balanced, in my opinion. But Pereira does frustrate me at times, but I think he's an important player. On his day, he can be a very important player for us. And I think for what we've paid for him, look, if he wants to go, let him go in the summer. But I still think he's got a role to play in this club, as long as you play him in a more natural position. I think we're not going to get the best out of AP in the position he's playing. And that's why we've not seen the AP probably of 2 seasons.
Sure. But Emilio, that goes back to the problem that we're seeing with Emil Smith-Rowe. Okay.
Yeah.
And I want to just talk a little bit about this. And I'm just going to say this because I think the situation Fulham have with Emil Smith-Rowe is concerning. Okay. Now, it's being called an injury. Okay, fine. But there's something else, in my opinion, going on with him because he is not – I don't think he's doing what Marco wants him to do, and I think it's affecting everything that's going on with the team because you need that leader, that player as your number 10 to really lead you. And I know what you're saying about Pereira. Pereira can do that. So the fact that he's playing in a role that's not suited for him, square peg and round hole, I understand where you're going on that. So I definitely understand your point of view on that, Emilio. But I also think that this whole Pereira thing kind of goes in lockstep with the whole Emil Smith-Rowe issue.
Yeah. But look at Pereira against Liverpool. If I recall rightly, Berger and Lukic played in midfield, didn't they? And then you had Pereira playing in a more advanced role and was effective. You know, he was one of the more productive games. So for me, it's all about depth of squad. And I think if one's injured, then where's the cover for the other? And this is where you always need to have 2 players for every position.
Every position. Yep.
You know, so it's, you know, we've lost Nelson, and I think we've actually missed him. We've missed his
I said that to you, Tony. I said that to you.
We've missed his energy coming off the bench, looking more lively, looking more up for it. Defends better than Traore, for example. So those little moments as well. I just like, you know, Nelson will come back in a couple of months' time, but his season, you could argue, is pretty much over because it's going to take another month to find fitness and maybe get it back into the squad. But overall, it goes back to depth, and Marco Silva's got a limited depth and squad to look to. You know, certain players in that team, like Ryan Sessegnon, he's everyone's fan's favourite. Clearly doesn't think he's got anything to offer. What value? Otherwise, when's he come off the bench to play out an important role? He hasn't. He's not good enough, and B, he isn't at the level he needs to be playing at Premier League level. Simple as that. Okay. You know, we picked him up for free, but where's Ryan Sessegnon's contribution in this squad? Mark Silva clearly thinks he's a long way off, but he's got no other options. Hence the reason why he's on the bench, but not really playing any part.
Okay, excellent stuff there, man. Right back to quickly on the goal from Raul.
Yeah. You know, greatly, we don't often score from set pieces. Is that number 2? Is that set piece number 2 that we've scored from this season?
I think so. Yeah.
But great corner. We should be delivering corners more frequently in that area. And you know, love Raul. You know, literally right in front of me, jumped up and you know, great glancing header with power, and you know, just showed his experience there. To be honest with you, so Spence, I thought I was recording the goal. And I thought, me being an idiot, I forgot to press the button record. So there's me holding the camera from the corner, and everyone was celebrating. I just said, bugger, the thing hasn't recorded. So I only recorded the celebration, not the actual goal itself. But overall, it was against the run of play. Let's be very clear. We did deserve to go 1-0 up, but you take it, right? You just take the goal. It just takes a second. One good delivery, one expert header, bang, 1-0, going to half time with a 1-goal lead. So yeah, undeserved, but you take it sometimes.
Okay, very good. All right. Tony, over to you. We are now going to talk about Ryan Christie. And I've watched this several times. I also had announcers make the argument that it should have been a yellow card. I kept hearing this while I'm watching the broadcast. I've watched the replay. I watched it live, and I thought, how's this not a red card? You guys were there. So What is your view of this? I think this is a red card all day long. If Fulham are getting red cards for the situation that they've had with, say, Tom Kearney, how is this any different, my friend?
And this is where the game's at the moment with these kind of decisions, Russ. They're inconsistent. And this is the problem. In these scenarios, when you bring VAR to start looking at these tackles, obviously when you slow them down, they always look 100 times worse than they are in game situation. Do I think Christie's gone in to hurt Robinson? No, I don't. I genuinely think he's gone in to win the ball. The argument is where were his studs and where was his foot in relation to Robinson and the ball? And this is the problem now that you've created in the game today, is that no one bloody knows what anymore is a foul and a red card, or what's serious foul play, or what's excessive, and it's a mess. And it needs to be sorted out. It needs to be sorted out, because there'll be 100 people that say that's a red card. There'll be 100 people that say it was a yellow card. There'll be 100 people that say it wasn't even and this is where we're at the moment in the game. Watching it live, seeing it at first, obviously due to Robinson's reaction, I'm thinking that's a red. It looked really bad. Having now seen it and watched it back, I think the thing that saves Christie here, and the reason why VAR didn't give it as a red, is because the ball was in the way of his foot and Robinson as he went through. And that's the only reason. If that ball hadn't been there and he'd gone through, I think he goes.
Okay. What are your thoughts about that, Emil? Do you agree with Tony on that?
Yeah, I do. To be honest, at the time when at the game, I didn't see anything excessive there. Again, it's happened so quickly. You haven't got the luxury of a video replay. My first reaction was maybe Robinson was making more of a meal for it. That was just looking at the ground. When you're emotional, you're literally looking at what happened there. I thought it didn't look like a dangerous tackle. I've seen it on the replay on my phone, and yeah, you're right. I think Tony's got a point. The fact that he touched the ball. The fact that he managed to get part of his foot on the ball suggests he was going for the ball, not for his ankle and for his leg. So that probably did save him. But Ryan Christie has got a tendency for making these rash tackles. And there was a moment thinking, actually, if there was any other play, it would have. I thought maybe Ryan Christie might have got a red card there just because of who he is, and he's got a tendency for sort of doing those sort of rash, ugly tackles. But there is lack of consistency. We know that, right? Tom Kearney, for something more innocuous, got sent off against Tottenham.
Right.
But had the means of being more reckless and more intentional. But the fact that Christie went for the ball, because if you look at it before, didn't he lose the ball a few moments before? I was just trying to look at the replay.
Yeah.
I think he lost the ball, and then the ball went towards Robinson. He went trying to get the ball, but he went with such force and probably a little bit reckless for me. So again, whether you get the ball or not, was their intent to get in there ugly? And I think the answer to that is yes. But does that warrant a red card? Probably not. And that's where the rules are a little bit ambiguous, to be honest with you. But overall, it's inconsistency. I've seen many of those given and many of those not given. And it's Marcus Silva's adamant it should have been a red card for consistency. But I can see why he didn't get the red. I can see why.
Right, Emilio, but that goes to Tony's argument that we need consistency. That's how he started this, and I totally agree, because we don't know what is a red, what is not, and that's a good point by Tony. That's why we started this. But like you said, I can understand why you guys are kind of in agreement that what saved him from it being a red. And that actually does make sense. It totally does. All right, guys, let's move on to the second half. And this is where I really want to delve in, Emilio and Tony, for a little bit. Before we talk about the goal itself by Evan Nielsen, I want to talk about the fact that Fulham continue to give up goals between the beginning of second half and about the 60th to the 65th minute. Why does this continue to happen, Emilio? I want to get your thoughts, and then we'll talk about the actual goal given up.
I think a lot of it is about, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's opposing managers know there's a weakness in Fulham's setup and system, right? So again, it's managers they know what Fulham are capable of doing, and I think now at the end of the day, that Iraola is right. He was pressing in that second half. He saw there was an opportunity to exploit. I saw them pushing up the pitch a lot higher in the second half than they did in the first. First half was scattered with a lot of errors. Both teams we gave the ball away cheaply, but so did Bournemouth. It wasn't the purest game, but it was exciting for a neutral. But I think there's a bit of tactical know-how. They know how Fulham have got weaknesses in defence. And if you get at them, press them with some level of intensity, like Bournemouth done, you're going to give up goals. And the lead up to that, the Anderson error, give Bournemouth great finish. Let's be honest with you, they turned Anderson inside out, but he had a very tight angle there. It wasn't the easiest angle to shoot from. You could argue, could Len have done better? I heard some people criticize Len maybe should be conceding in that near post. He could have done better. I disagree with that. He went at such force, but you can't give away goals like that, Anderson. You're a 30 million international defender. You've got to be doing better. But overall, it was a deserved equaliser. But to your point, why are Fulham conceding in that 15-minute raid? I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. Why are Fulham conceding in the late 80s and 90 minutes as well?
We're going to talk about that too.
It's the same. It's about game management, right? I don't know. Something's not right.
Something's not right. That's why
something's not right. And opposing managers need to be applauded for recognizing there's a weakness in Fulham here. Psychologically, it's got to be Fulham's heads now. There's this thing: can we get through the first quarter of an hour in the second half without conceding, and can we win ugly and hold on to the game when we're not necessarily playing well? That psychologically, that barrier needs to be overcome. Get a good psychologist at the club to sort this out, because otherwise, these problems aren't going to go away.
Okay, very good. Over to you, Tony. You and I have talked a lot about this. What is your view on this? Is this about adjustments from the opposition manager? The reason why this is happening, is it also, like you've said to me, is this a mental issue that they're having, that they're just not turned on, or is this simply the other manager making adjustments, or is it all of the above?
You've hit the nail on the head, Emilio. It's a psychological issue now that's affecting Fulham. It's as simple as that. The players are psychologically, it's in their heads. And I think, look, Marco Silva would have said to the lads before they went out, pretty much, first 15 minutes, keep it nice and tight. Don't give anything away. Be solid. Look after the ball. And he would have reiterated that point to them categorically. What you can't do, unfortunately, in football is legislate for fundamental individual mistakes. And the only reason Bournemouth scored in that moment is because it was a mistake. Nothing to do with us, being psychologically inept or anything like that. It was just poor play from Anderson. It was poor positioning, poor reading of the game. And, listen, Evan Nilsson, he's right. The angle was tight. It's a good finish from that angle.
It really is.
There's nothing Leno could do in that situation. Absolutely. He was relying on Anderson to defend that situation better. And 1v1, Anderson should have done better. He made an absolute, disaster of that situation. And that's why we got punished at that moment.
Okay. Very good. Good stuff, guys. We'll talk about Fulham giving up late goals as well when we get there. But back over to you, Tony. I want to talk about this because I talked about this at the beginning of the show, talking about, I think the match changed. And I said this on Full Time when Tom Kearney came on. Things seem to really get under control with Fulham having more of the ball. And it seemed like Kearney's inclusion was a big part of that. What did you say?
I totally agree, but I don't know why Silva left it again so late, 68 minutes. It was clear Pereira had run his race again at half time. It wasn't happening, and Silva just doesn't seem to have the non-fear of taking a player off at half time, saying, you know what, you haven't done enough in that half, other than obviously the corner. But, if we're keeping players on a football pitch because they can put one corner out of 50 into an area, then, there's a problem. Kearney came on. I felt we started to control the game. As soon as he came on, there was a control in midfield that we hadn't had up until that point. Right. But even before Kearney came on, you got to remember, Raul had a double header save.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Could have scored. Then Billing, I think, also had an effort, which, remember, Leno saved as well. And then obviously, then the change comes on and Kearney. But as soon as he came on, I felt there was a little bit more of a calmness in us, certainly in midfield areas. Sasha Lukic then looked a bit calmer, didn't seem to be all over the place. He looked a bit more disciplined in there. And there's no doubt that he definitely made a difference to the way that we played and the tempo of how we were moving the ball.
Okay, excellent stuff. All right, Emilio, let's go a little bit further into the match. Let's talk about Harry Wilson puts Fulham ahead, and I think this is a really nice goal. And Harry Wilson continues to get it done, my friend. What are your thoughts about the goal here from Harry Wilson?
Yeah, and before we do that, one thing that we haven't really said is I'm surprised Raul came off when he did.
Oh,
Because
okay.
like you said, Tony, that double save the keeper made.
Yep.
He looked he had legs on him, Raul. He still looked pretty sharp. Soon as the ball went out of play, Raul was taken off. So actually, I'd criticise why wasn't Raul there for another quarter of an hour. I actually thought he still had plenty to offer. Looked sharp, looked strong. I said their keeper Kepa made a great double save there before we scored that second goal. But yes, I just don't want to call that out because I'm surprised Raul came off that early. So I actually thought he looked quite good and was good and did a lot of tracking back in defence. When it counted. So that's just, I don't know what fans think, but I thought that I was surprised they came off so early. But again, perseverance with Tom Kane did make a difference when he came on. Just kept the ball running, moving, passing. How many times did Tom give the ball away? I can't recall once giving the ball away. Unlike Pereira gave up the ball two times out of 3 throughout the game. But we persevered. We pushed. And Harry Wilson, look, again, he wants to judge. I saw the interview after the game against Chelsea saying, look, if your manager wants him to start game, play as a substitute or just stay on the bench, he will do whatever he's instructed to do. But the manager's had faith in him, made him start. He's rewarded the manager's faith in him by scoring another header. So great move, great head. And, nice to see Marco Silva's comments towards Harry Wilson. So again, he's earned a right to play against Ipswich next week, start the game again. And who knows? I've been a critic of Wilson when he starts the game. I don't think he does enough. He seems to have more of that impact when he comes off the bench. But today, I think first half, he was one of my livelier players, to be honest with you. It's just unfortunate the final ball in the final third wasn't good enough throughout the game, especially in that first half. But Wilson, pleased for him again, gets involved. Look, it can be dangerous. But overall, I thought 2-1 up. That's it. Game over. Let's close it. Let's game man is up, we've said, and just close out the last 15, 20 minutes. But we knew it was going to be a long 15, 20 minutes after that.
And it was, Emilio. And Tony, I'm going to go over to you to talk about the equalizer. And what's interesting is the broadcast I was watching, the announcer says, I think there are more goals in this. And unfortunately, he ended up being right. So we've talked a little bit about the goal. It starts with the mistake from Diop, but there's a lot more to it. So let's talk about the equalizer to finish this up.
Yeah, again, it comes down to game management, Russ. 89 minutes.
Is this a mental thing too?
Yeah. Yes, it definitely 100%. And I think it's got a lot to do with fatigue. I don't think we're fit enough collectively at the moment. I think we get tired, and with 10 minutes to go, I think we look, Amelia hit it there, we look leggy. Certain players look leggy, and that's got to do with fitness. And a lot of this is Silva must be thinking, okay, 89 minutes, there's going to be roughly between 4 and 6 minutes injury. Keep the ball, get the ball high up the pitch and keep it in the corners and just look after the ball. Don't give it away. Just don't give it away. I don't know only Diop will know what's going through his head when he's looking to make that pass at that moment. He will only know. He's got Castagna standing 10 yards away from him. Surely he's shouting at him, give me the ball, give me the ball. Obviously, we can't hear it, but he decides to ignore him and then play a horrible pass. Okay. But as I said, even by giving that ball away, we've still got an opportunity to defend it. And I think that when it gets into our box, there's a couple of players that could have dealt with it better. Anderson, for me, is half-hearted again. Doesn't really, I think he could have thrown himself into that ball. I think he could have done a lot more. And it's just, fair play, great finish, very tenacious little finish there. Got to put your hands up and say, well done. But really, should he have had that opportunity? I don't think so, personally. And I think we could have dealt with it much better.
Okay, so that goes back to Tony. I was talking about game management. Emilio talking about fitness. You're both talking about fitness. So I think these are factors and why we're seeing this. But then my counter argument, Tony, is why did we look more fit against Chelsea at the end of the match?
Because I felt Chelsea absolutely blew a casket. They looked shattered in that last 15 minutes. And remember, their manager only made one change, Russ.
Yeah, that's true.
For some bizarre reason, he only made one substitution. And it was clear they were out on their feet. They were absolutely gone, Chelsea. And we took advantage of it. with one good movement and one good transition of play, we took advantage. But I just feel that in those situations, I think it's about game management. And
Okay.
you're talking about professional footballers. They should be able to see a game out and look after the ball and manage those situations better than we did today.
Well, we've seen this a few times at Craven Cottage. You guys have seen this. You saw it against West Ham. Definitely you saw that against West Ham. We saw it against Everton, as you talked about earlier, Tony, with the whole situation. I think you both might have mentioned Cuenca, or it might have been Emilio talked about that. So there have been some decisions and some game management issues that maybe that's the cause of why we're having issues at the beginning of the second half and unfortunately at the end. And that's also kind of where we are.
But
a 2-2 draw.
We've always also pressed the pause button at the point that Diop carried a ball. Look at the rest of the defenders. Where was Robinson? Robinson was halfway up the pitch, right?
Yep.
So again, Diop's decision making, was a little bit suspect. But for 89 minutes, I thought he had a very good game, very controlled. I said it earlier, and it's a shame that his error contributed.
But on that point, Emilio, you're absolutely right. Why is Silva telling Robertson to still bomb on in the 89th minute?
Defend.
Tell him, drop in now.
Yeah.
We've won the game. We don't need you bombing on anymore.
Exactly.
Just sit in.
That's a good point.
That's the reason why if you press that pause button, I'd like to see Robertson when we got caught out on the left, there was no defensive cover there. And that happened a few times in that game today when Robinson was bombing up the pitch and we got exposed on the left-hand side because we gave the ball away cheaply, no defensive cover, and Bournemouth seemed to have that extra man overlapping our defence. And is that tactics by the manager? Or is that bad defending from our team? Look, Silva has to answer a lot of this, to be honest with you. I think when you're 2-1 up, protect that lead and don't expose us. I felt at times, did Diop feel pressured to go forward? I've seen some comments on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Where Silva was criticising Diop earlier in the game for not going more direct and not going more long. The fact that he did try to go sort of semi-long with that pass, it's just unfortunate it contributed to the equaliser. So again, if what these observations were correct, then Diop was expected to go long with that. That's what Marcus Silva was criticising him for not doing enough earlier by doing too much short passing. So interesting. I'd like to see. I don't know if people saw that, but there were some comments today about Silva criticising Diop for not being direct, not playing the ball long enough.
Very interesting stuff, guys. Really good by both of you. This hour's flown by, but we have to end with man of the match. I've already said my man of the match is Bernd Leno. How about you, Emilio?
I think you have to give it to him, to be honest with you. The irony is I was going to give it to Diop up to 89 minutes. I actually thought he bossed that defence, led from the back as well, just doing the very simple things well. His good eye for detail, but unfortunately, he's going to lose a few brownie points because of that. But I think you have to give it to Leno because Leno made some crucial saves, to be honest with you. But Tom, from a cameo, that 20-minute appearance, I thought he changed the game and almost won us the game. But I think if you're looking for the overall 90-odd minutes, you have to give it to Leno.
Okay. Tony, you've already messaged me that it's Leno for you too.
Yeah, look, I think over the whole 90 minutes, I thought Harry Wilson played very well today, to be honest. I thought he put in a really good shift, scored a good goal as well. And I think, again, Raul doesn't get enough credit for the work that he does for us off the ball. He works tirelessly, honestly. The hardest job in the team he has. But today, in terms of his saves and, look, the thing I want to touch on is that we've kept 3 clean sheets in 19 games. That isn't good enough. That isn't good enough. We have to start keeping clean sheets. We have to, or at least stop giving away bad goals. And until we address that issue, then we are going to have the situation that we found ourselves in over the last 7 games, regardless of who we've played against. We will draw or lose a lot more games than we'll win because of those situations. And that's something that Silva needs to address in January. He has to address it.
Okay, great stuff. Great show, guys. Before we wrap up this show, I want to ask you both where your head is at heading into the second half of the season. I think that's a good place for us to end because it's been, I think, an overall success. I'm disappointed because they sit 8th, and Tony, you and I have talked about they could be 6th at this point. They absolutely, if they win, they'd be sitting 6th heading into the games for tomorrow. you don't know what happens with those games, but you still have a chance to end halfway through the season 6th. Instead, you're 8th, which is good, but it could have been better. So that's kind of where I'm split on this. I think it's been a success, but I still think that there's a lot of work to do. So that's how I want to end it. Over to you, Emilio. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, it's been a very exciting season, very eventful. I've enjoyed watching this first half of the season. Yeah, most fans will accept that we should have another 6 or so points more. But Tony's spot on about this clean sheets. Nottingham Forest, what are they doing good? They're scoring goals, but they know how to protect those goals. They're hardly. How many clean sheets have they had? Forest have had at least 6 or 7, I think. So it's Forest are doing the things that we aspire to be doing. If they can do it, why the hell can't we? To be honest, I don't think Forest on paper have got a better squad than us, but they're founding a winning formula. They've got confidence. They're winning games. We're not losing games. We've only lost 4 games. Let's remember that. We've only lost 4 games in 19. I can't remember many seasons where we've gone halfway through a Premier League season and only lost 4 games. But you could argue, how do you game manage and how do you convert those draws into victories? So we're not far away from pushing up that table, but equally, if we don't continue the same level of form we've had in the first 19 games, we can go the other way. So it's that fine line. It's nice to push on, but if we don't push on, you can quickly go back the other way. Man United, Tottenham, Brighton, these are all teams, Aston Villa, these are teams below us, right? Who'd expect us to be above us. So top 8 could be quickly top 12. So we need some reinforcement, get those signings in quickly, Tony Khan. Give Marco Silva the tools that he needs, give him the depth that he needs, even to push us on to the end of the season. Get some loan signings, make some shrewd loan signings. Don't wait till the 31st of January, Tony Khan. Make those signings now. And we do need a striker. I think at the end of the day, we do need
I agree,
striker. We've said it for 2 years now. Even when Mitrovic was here, we kept saying we need backup for him. If something happens to him, we've got no striker. Go and make those acquisitions now, Tony Khan, and get some shrewd signings, even if it's loans, because that squad needs depth.
I totally agree. Over to you, Tony. I want to get your thoughts overall the first half of the season, and I want to just mention what Emilio said. I agree with 100%, because if we're going to talk about the first half of the season, we have to look at the second half of the season. I know you and I have talked about this a lot. They need additions, and they need it ASAP.
Russ, if we hadn't given Diego Forlán time and space in the 118th minute in 2010, we would have been European champions.
Don't go there. What are you doing to me?
It's all ifs, buts, and maybes. The bottom line is that the league, I always say it, the league table doesn't lie, right? And there's a reason why Forest are 3rd and we're 8th. And the reason I compare us to Forest is because I think they're very similar. I really do. But the difference,
I don't think there's a big difference. Right.
The big difference is that Nuno has set himself up defensively. His 4 defenders are defending first and foremost. And Milenkovic has been the find of the season, by the way. Let me tell you, he is an absolute beast. A beast of a defender. Anyway, that aside, what we need to do, number one, we need to improve our game management. That's got to be something that Silva, starts working on at training. Whilst I think we've made great improvements in some areas, I think we've sort of regressed in others, and that's from a defensive point of view.
Okay.
And moving forward, for me, the key is about balance. I think Emilio talked about balance, and in January, it starts with getting that much needed player investment that's going to add the quality that we're lacking at the moment. And what that is, in my opinion, it's like 3 players and a striker. Unfortunately, most of the country's looking for a striker. Everyone's looking for that prolific goal scorer. But we have to really, Tony Khan has to be very shrewd about the players he brings in and the positions that he brings them in. And I would say that getting that striker in is absolutely paramount if we want to even think about top 6.
Okay, very good. Great show. Tony, thank you so much for joining Emilio and myself.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, unbelievable. Thank you, Emilio. Great.
Okay, Emilio, the Fulham Shadow returns. How you doing? Thank you so much for doing this tonight.
No, thank you very much for having me on, Russ. Yeah, good to do the show with you, Tony. I've just seen a news flash come on my phone that Jimmy Carter's just passed away, 100 years old, Russ. So just literally seen that up now. So rest in peace, Jimmy. But yeah, overall, look, half a season. We've got a lot to be grateful for. We've had a great season. Really enjoyed the first half, but it doesn't stop here. We've got another 19 games. we're going to have to play the same teams again and convert those draws into it. We've got a lot of home games against the bigger teams, so to speak. We've got to improve our home form as well. That's another thing we need to improve second half season. Our home form is not the level we need it to be.
That's a great point. And that's a great way to end. The home form needs to be better. I'm glad that you mentioned that, Emilio. Okay. Well, thank you, the two of you, for doing the show with me. I've really enjoyed it, but it is time to go. For Emilio Danello, and Tony Gold, and Russ Goldman, thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk, part of the TalkSport Fan Network.